History remembers the siege of Mecca as a tragedy, a tyrant's assault on a sacred sanctuary. But beneath the dust of centuries lies a very different story. A collapsing empire on the brink, a fractured world desperate for unity, and a ruler whose decisions would redefine the architecture of Islamic civilization. Tonight on The Missing Dots, we peel back the layers of myth, propaganda, and emotional storytelling to reveal the forensic truth behind 73 AH, the moment Abd-al-Malik didn't just end a civil war. He rebuilt the very structure of history.
SubhanAllah, it really is a heavy way to look at it when you frame it like that.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it's necessary, right? Because we all grew up with this very specific version of the story.
Right, a very emotional version.
Exactly. You picture 73 AH or 692 CE, and it's just this black and white morality play. You got Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr as the pious hero defending the sanctuary. And on the other side, you have Al-Hajjaj, right? The bloodthirsty tyrant sent by Abd-al-Malik and the Marwinids, just to, I don't know, maliciously flatten the Kaaba with flaming catapults and kill everyone in his path.
Right, the cartoon villain narrative. It's dramatic. But, you know, like a lot of those stories, when you actually look at the forensic evidence, that narrative it completely falls apart.
Which is why we're looking at this today.
Yeah.
We really want to strip away centuries of, like, political propaganda and just look at the cold, hard metadata.
Yeah, the actual reality is on the ground.
Because what we find is that this wasn't some sacrilegious act of destruction. It was brutal but completely unavoidable counterinsurgency operation, one that actually saved the civilization from just collapsing.
It really did. And, you know, to understand it, we kind of have to zoom out first.
Right, set the scene for us.
You have to look at the catastrophic state of the world right before the siege. The Islamic Empire was in the middle of the Second Fitna.
The Civil War.
Exactly, a 12-year civil war after the death of Yazid I. The state had completely fractured. It wasn't just a political disagreement in a palace somewhere.
No, the sources paint this really bleak picture. The empire had literally broken into these competing substates.
Right, and global trade routes were just paralyzed.
Because merchants couldn't cross borders safely.
Yeah, exactly. You couldn't move goods. People were struggling. And on top of that, you have Byzantine forces actively probing the northern borders.
Wow. So they're looking for weakness.
Always. They're looking for any chance to reconquer lost territory. The existential threat was very, very real.
So in the middle of all this chaos, it basically comes down to two main rivals.
Right.
In Mecca, you've got Ibn al-Zubayr. He's got this regional secessionist government going. He controls the Hijaz, parts of Iraq, Yemen. But then over in Damascus, you have Abd-al-Malik. And he represents the centralizing state, just desperately trying to put the empire back together.
Yeah, he's the central authority.
I'm just trying to picture this administratively. It's like,
yeah,
imagine a modern nation trying to survive with two competing presidents.
It's a nightmare.
Right. Facing a hostile superpower like the Byzantines. But internally, you have like two central banks, two tax systems, two militaries.
And neither side recognizes the other.
Exactly. Like, can a society even survive that? Or was Abd-al-Malik, you know, legally obligated to just step in and end it?
Well, from a classical Islamic law perspective, under CR, he absolutely had to. Having a dual caliphate is strictly invalid.
Because it splits the community.
Exactly. You cannot have two sovereign leaders because it shatters the Jama'ah, the unified community.
Right.
It breaks the social contract. If a ruler loses the ability to enforce universal law or protect the borders, they devolve into a state of bukat.
Okay, bukat. Let's clarify that term, because it seems really central to why the Marwanids did what they did. That basically means an illegal insurgency, right?
Essentially, yes. A faction rebelling against the legitimate central authority. And the legal principle for dealing with bugat is maslaha mursala.
Which is public interest.
Right, ruling in the unrestricted public interest. A leader has to weigh the lesser of two evils to protect the general welfare, and the general welfare was being destroyed. People were starving.
So from Abd-al-Malik's perspective, he's not, like, conquering a foreign country or attacking a rival religion.
No, not at all.
He's executing a legally mandated counterinsurgency. He has to restore order before the state just dissolves into warring tribes and Rome swallows them up.
Exactly. The historical records show he really viewed it as a desperate rescue operation, not an imperial conquest.
Okay, so that makes sense of the why. The systemic reasons, it was an existential crisis. But I still struggle with the how.
The tactical side of things.
Yeah, the tactical reality, because this is where the popular narrative really dials up the villainy. The story is that Al-Hajjaj was just this unhinged madman who marched into Mecca because he hated the Kaaba.
Right, which is it's just not true. The historical Al-Hajjaj was, well, he was a highly disciplined, ruthlessly efficient administrator. He didn't just march in and start smashing things.
He didn't?
No, he actually set up a base in Taif first, just outside of Mecca. And he spent months, some sources say 6 or 7 months, just trying to negotiate.
Wow, 7 months of just talking.
Yeah. He was under direct imperial instructions to get a peaceful surrender. He offered amnesties. He offered safe passage to Ibn al-Zubayr and his family.
Okay, but I have to push back here a little bit.
Sure.
Even if it's a counterinsurgency, you don't bring heavy artillery to your own holy site.
Okay.
That just feels inherently destructive.
Mhm.
We know the Kaaba was struck by stones. We know it caught fire.
Right.
If they weren't trying to destroy it, why bring catapults?
That's a fair question. And the answer really comes down to military topography and the actual realities of 7th century siege ballistics.
Okay.
Al-Hajjaj used these traction trebuchets called manjaniques, and he mounted them on Mount Abu Qubais, which is a steep peak overlooking the Valley of Mecca.
Right, so he has the high ground.
Yes, but we have to throw away the Hollywood image of medieval warfare. These weren't those massive, masonry-shattering counterweight trebuchets that throw boulders the size of cars.
Oh, really?
Those didn't even exist in the 7th century.
What were they using?
These were human-powered. You literally had crews of men pulling down on ropes to launch the projectiles.
Oh, wow. So they couldn't throw anything that big.
Exactly. They launched relatively small stones. They were anti-personnel devices designed for high-angle suppressive fire, not structural demolition.
Okay, but why did he even need suppressive fire?
Because of Ibn al-Zubayr's defensive strategy, he had completely militarized the sanctuary, he entrenched his combatants in the surrounding peaks, and he used the courtyard of the Kaaba itself as a fortified redoubt.
Oh, man. So he literally turned the holy site into a military base.
He did. And if an enemy forces you to fight uphill into a fortified valley, you have to neutralize their high ground defenses before your infantry can even move in.
That makes sense. So the ballistics, the
Yep.
stones were aimed at the combatants holding the perimeter.
Yes. Ballistics modeling confirms they were aiming at the Zubayrid troops, not the stone core of the Kaaba. The damage to the sanctuary was collateral. It was just the inherent margin of error when you're dropping stones from a mountain peak in the 7th century.
Right. You can't exactly laser guide a rock.
No, you can't. The goal was to clear the perimeter, not to demolish the building.
That is fascinating. But it raises a huge contradiction.
How so?
Well, if the forensic reality is this clinical-like, a negotiated tactical counterinsurgency using suppressive fire with just collateral damage, why does history remember it as a bloodthirsty massacre? I mean, some popular accounts say Al-Hajjaj executed like 100,000 people in Mecca.
Right. And what's really interesting is how that memory was engineered. Because the dominant historical accounts we use today, like al-Tabari or al-Balaturi, they were compiled centuries later.
During the Abbasid era, right?
Exactly. And the Abbasids had violently overthrown the Umayyads, the Marwanids.
Ah, the ultimate political spin room.
Totally. The victor writes the history. The Abbasids had this huge ideological incentive to legitimize their revolution. So they painted their predecessors as uniquely evil and sacrilegious.
Right, you need a good villain to justify why you took over.
Exactly. So their court historians took these dry, operational military logs from the siege, and they just retrofitted them. They added cinematic dialogue, atrocity narratives, and just wildly inflated the casualty numbers.
Yeah, about those numbers. You said some accounts claim 100,000 people were executed.
Right.
How big was Mecca at this time?
Late 7th century, maybe a few thousand permanent residents.
Wow. So the math is literally impossible.
Completely absurd. The entire Syrian force that Al-Hajjaj brought with him was only about 2,000 men.
So 2,000 men are going to execute and dispose of 100,000 people?
It would require an industrial apparatus that just did not exist. Those numbers are rhetorical folklore. Amplified by Abbasid scribes to cast a shadow over the Marwanid legacy, it's not actual historical data.
That makes so much more sense.
Right.
But even if we strip away all the Abbasid exaggeration, there's still this massive elephant in the room.
The theology of fighting in Mecca.
Right. Fighting in the sacred mosque is strictly forbidden in Islam. So how did the classical scholars at the time reconcile a military assault inside the absolute peace of the sanctuary?
It was the defining theological dilemma of the era. Jurists had to balance the physical preservation of a holy site against the survival of the entire community.
Right.
In classical jurisprudence, you evaluate this through maqasid al-sharia, the higher objectives of Islamic law. So you have hifz al-mal.
Which means protecting property.
Right. And in this context, the physical preservation of religious property. But you also have hifz al-nafs, which is the preservation of human life and the security of the ummah.
We really need to slow down and look at what they were weighing here, because it's like the ultimate trolley problem.
It really is.
Do you let the train run over the holiest building in your civilization, or do you let it run over the civilization itself? Because stopping a 12-year civil war that's starving everyone, that definitely falls under preserving human life.
Exactly. And the consensus was that Ibn al-Zubayr, by weaponizing the sanctuary, legally voided its tactical immunity.
Wow. Because he turned it into a fortress.
Right. The jurists argued that the sanctity of the haram doesn't provide like a magical force field for armed combatants who are actively threatening the state. The preservation of the macro state overrides the physical building when that building is being used to prolong a civil war.
So, what does this mean for the Kaaba itself after the dust settled? Because Al-Hajjaj wins, Ibn al-Zubayr is killed, and the Marwanids take control. Does he just leave the sanctuary in ruins to prove a point?
Actually, their immediate actions completely contradict the whole tyrant narrative. Caliph Abd al-Malik immediately ordered the sanctuary to be cleaned, purified, and rebuilt.
Really?
Yes, but he made a very specific, calculated architectural decision. See, during his counter-caliphate, Ibn al-Zubayr had physically altered the Kaaba.
Wait, he changed the building?
Yeah, he expanded it to include the semicircular wall, the Hatim, and he added a second ground-level door, claiming he was reverting it to an original Abrahamic footprint.
So he basically played architect with the holiest site in Islam to cement his own political legitimacy.
Exactly. So Abd al-Malik undid all of those changes. He ordered it rebuilt to the exact dimensions established by the Quraysh, the footprint that existed during the Prophet's time.
So he resealed the second door.
Resealed the door, restored the smaller perimeter.
Was that just to spite Ibn al-Zubayr? Like erasing his legacy from the stone?
No, it was actually a brilliant piece of constitutional statecraft. Abd al-Malik realized that if he let politically motivated structural changes stand, it would set a dangerous precedent.
Oh, I see. Every future rebel would just claim divine inspiration, tear it down, and rebuild it their way.
Exactly. By reverting it to the widely recognized baseline, he depoliticized the architecture of the sanctuary. He locked in the dimensions. And that exact spatial layout is what millions of pilgrims see today.
SubhanAllah. He didn't just win the war. He permanently secured the site's neutrality.
He did.
But neutralizing Mecca was really just putting out the immediate fire.
Right.
He still had this fractured, multilingual empire barely holding together.
Right, the siege was just the prerequisite. Abd al-Malik then had to transition the state from this fragile tribal coalition into a fully institutionalized empire.
Which requires massive systemic reform.
Massive.
Because once you secure the territory, your next crisis is economic survival. You can't run an empire if you don't control your own money. And the sources show that before Abd al-Malik, they didn't even mint their own currency.
Right, they relied entirely on Byzantine gold solidi and Sasanian silver drams.
They were outsourcing their economic sovereignty to their enemies.
Which is incredibly dangerous. So in 77 AH, Abd al-Malik introduced the first purely epigraphic Arabic gold dinar. He removed all foreign imagery, no Christian crosses, no Zoroastrian fire altars, and replaced them with clear Quranic text.
Wow.
It stripped the economic leverage away from foreign powers and created a sovereign Islamic economy.
But to run an economy, you have to actually collect the money. Which brings us to the bureaucracy, the state registry, the diwan. It was a linguistic mess, wasn't it?
A total mess. It was kept in Greek in Syria and Persian in Iraq. So the central state had to rely entirely on non-Muslim scribal elites.
So a Syrian farmer spoke Arabic, but was taxed by a Greek scribe.
Right, so Abd al-Malik ordered the entire bureaucracy to be translated into Arabic, administrative Arabization. It unified the language across this massive, multi-ethnic empire.
But standardizing language kind of exposed a huge flaw in how Arabic was written at the time, didn't it?
It did. Early Arabic script was highly ambiguous. It lacked the diacritical marks, the little dots, the nuqat.
Right.
Without those dots, a single word could be read in multiple different ways.
So a regional governor could just intentionally misinterpret a tax edict to keep the money.
Exactly. Or worse, people could misread the Quran itself.
So how do they fix it while actively trying to govern?
Al-Hajjaj actually commissioned scholars to add these dots and vowel indicators to the script. It wasn't just a literary thing, it was a security measure.
Wow.
Standardizing the script, standardized the law, it stopped tax evasion, and alhamdulillah, it permanently locked in the textual integrity of the Quran.
So you secure the economy, you fix the tax code, you clarify the language, and then the final step is projecting that unified power, which leads to monumental architecture, like the Dome of the Rock.
Right. Built in Jerusalem in 72 AH, while the Civil War was still wrapping up.
It wasn't just a beautiful building, was it?
No, it was a geopolitical statement. Placing this massive golden dome, covered in Quranic inscriptions, right on the horizon of Jerusalem, he was directly challenging Byzantine Christology. He was signaling that the Islamic State was a sovereign Mediterranean power equal to Rome.
It's just amazing. You take away the Abbasid spin, you look at the raw data and the institutions, and the story of 73 AH just completely flips. Abd al-Malik wasn't a godless tyrant trying to destroy Islam. He was the architect who laid the concrete foundation for the next millennium of Islamic civilization.
The forensic audit proves it. He didn't destroy history, he unified it. Without that consolidation, the fractured substates would have been picked off by the Byzantines. That golden age of science and culture would never have happened.
Which leaves us with a truly heavy thought to end on. The sources mention the historian Ibn Khaldun and his concept of asabiyya, this idea that state formation requires a singular, dominating power capable of enforcing the rule of law. It asks you to ponder a really difficult reality. Can we ever truly separate the beautiful architecture, the refined language, and the economic stability of a golden age from the brutal, pragmatic use of force required to lay its foundations? Does building a lasting peace always require someone willing to wage a necessary war? It's something to think about. To rebuild your mental peace and legacy today, give charity, sponsor a student, and plant a tree. May Allah grant us success. Don't forget to come on, let's go. Don't forget to follow this channel, The Missing Dots. Thank you.